We are so sorry that our sponsor for this room, and a good friend of mine, Representative Ron Reynolds from Houston, District 25, he had an accident, so he may catch the tail end of this. He may not, but he is available for comment after, and we thank him for his always unwavering support in the fight for justice and the fight for equity and diversity, which is why we were able to get this very nice press conference room today. In order to speak out against House Bill 2548. And let me be clear, I've spoken to the office of House Bill 2548, which is Representative Harris. We've addressed our concerns, so this is not some attack out of nowhere. And you know, we have some concerns, right? We have some concerns that this piece of legislation is nothing more than a following of orders of the Republican right-wing federal conversation that's going on in order to eliminate diversity and equity and inclusion on all levels, but here particularly in this case in our higher education school systems, right? And I think, you know, folks like my brother here, Minister Dominique Alexander from Dallas, the Next Generation Action Network, and many of the good folks behind me, we have been fighting to make sure we can have diversity, equity, inclusion in as many endeavors of life, but especially in education, right? We feel that if we do education right, if we tell history right, if we tell the truth right, then hopefully we don't make some of the mistakes that we are sadly making today. And we think that this piece of legislation is, maybe the intent was good, I don't know, but after reading it, we feel that this, again, is just another attempt to erase, eradicate, and diminish very large groups of people, including women. We just had a conversation today, and Mary, who's a volunteer of AJC, is going to be talking about some of this later. We feel that this basically, if you are anything outside of the status quo, we don't want our institutions of higher education to let you teach about it. And now we're going to penalize our institutions, our college institutions, which, should I remind you, are the places where a lot of kids, for the first time, they get to take some deep dives into history and deep dives into truth and deep dives into something than the other. But now, instead of incentivizing this, we want to penalize the institutions, take away academic freedom, put all type of burdens on administration, just in the name of this attack, this crazy attack on diversity, equity, inclusion. So I called some friends today from all over the place, and you're going to hear from a broad group of people. Up first, I think, before I get to Dominique, I'll have Mary, because she's worked on the bill on AJC's behalf. So Mary, be up first. And just say and spell your name before you start talking.
Okay. My name's Mary, last name Elizabeth. I'm with the Austin Justice Coalition, and the bill is trying to stop, to block current discussion in education on some of the most vital issues that face our society today. It wants to stifle the free exchange of ideas, which is fundamental to higher education in this country. If we can't talk about these issues, we can't work through them together. As a woman, I'm surprised to find that, as a white woman, I'm surprised to find that I'm included among the marginal groups that are to be silenced, or that issues facing my life are not to be discussed. That's new for me, and while I support all marginalized groups, I want women throughout Texas to know that they're in the spotlight as well. We need to work on this together, and this train ain't stopping.
Hello, y'all. My name is Minister Dominique Alexander. I'm the president and founder of the Next Generation Action Network. I want to thank first off, thank my counterpart, Chaz Moore and Austin Justice Coalition for their continued support and dedication and leadership always taking the leadership for organizations that are across the state. Here at the state capitol, I want to thank everyone who have assembled around me. I also want to thank State Representative Ron Reynolds for his continued leadership here in the state legislature. The Next Generation Action Network look at bills like this as yet bills that yet censor, yet history. We understand that the American history, the true American history, is a history of all. This undermines academic freedom. As a civil rights leader, I stand on the shoulders of those who have fought the right to learn the full history, the good, the bad, the ugly. The bill aims to turn the clock in controlling what cannot be taught in our classrooms. It seeks to strip educators of their freedom to teach and silence their ability to speak truth about racism, gender equality, injustice, academic freedom, and the foundation of a thriving democracy. This kind of censorship creates the fear of classrooms. It forces professors to second-guess their words and suppress a critical conversation that is necessary to shape and inform citizens. Limiting students' educational exposure. We cannot build a society if students are denied the tools to understand injustice. Education must be a reflection of the reality. Our young people deserve to know the history of redlining, Jim Crow, mass incarceration, and systematic barriers that still exist today. This bill seeks to produce a generation of students ill-equipped to address racial justice issues, gender discrimination. We cannot allow this ignorant legislative proposal. What's next? Thurgood Marshall, Angela Davis, Barack Obama could be sitting in a Texas classroom right now. We cannot rob them of the knowledge, of the courage that's needed to transform our society. The Next Generation Action Network has been here continuously in the last 6 legislatures, and we have saw this movement of censorship, this movement of rewriting the history. And our organization stand with all of the state representatives and state senators who are fighting tirelessly. The organizations, organizers, community people, individuals who say enough is enough, that we cannot allow this agenda to stamper our history. We must understand a perfect society is a society that understands the history of a women's suffrage movement. A perfect society is a society that understands the fullness of the Reconstruction era. A perfect society understands the true history of 1619, 400 years of oppression of African Americans. The true history understands all of the people whose shoulders we stand on right today. We will not allow their sacrifice, their life, their blood, their tears to yet be whitewashed in Texas classrooms, whether it's in elementary, high school, colleges, wherever it is. The Next Generation Action Network stands together, united, to fight like hell against HB 2548. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, man. That's my brother from Dallas. Also, today we have, because a lot of times people think that we just up in arms all by ourselves, angry about everything, which I think there's a lot to be angry about. But we also have folks that may directly be impacted by this. We have Esmeralda Hernandez. I hope I said that as right as I could. And she's a professor. I'll let her say what she has to say.
Hi all, my name is Esmeralda Rubalcaba Hernandez, and I am a social worker, a PhD candidate at the University of Texas at Arlington, and an adjunct professor there and at St. Edward's University. My research area centers around racial studies at the intersection of immigration and policing systems. Our students cannot learn about these systems and others without knowing the historical foundations. And those historical foundations are foundations that are going to reference, that are going to center the reality of chattel slavery, the reality of settler colonialism, and how those have formed this foundation that impacts us to this very day. to send social work, sociology, criminal justice, and other students out into the profession without knowing the realities that impact every single one of us today, regardless of our racial identities, of our ancestries. We are all impacted. Not having students who know this and are out doing work in communities is going to inevitably harm our communities. It is going to cause a great amount of danger to people who are already marginalized and who have already been historically oppressed. This is all a coordinated, centuries-long effort to ensure the erasure of our communities, of all communities, except for those in dominant racial groups. And yet, dehumanizing those who are Black and brown dehumanizes those who are categorized as white as well. So this is a bill that seeks to harm all of us, again, regardless of the social identities that have been put on us through living and through being here within these systems. This bill is going to cause, and has already caused, a great amount of harm. We know that even the threat of bills like these cause a lot of fear and anguish to communities that have already experienced historical and intergenerational fear and anguish. It is very, very important that all of us, again, regardless of our social identities, come together and oppose not only this specific bill, but others like it. It is really important that we are able to see the interconnectedness of all of our social identities, whether those be racially dominant or not, whether those be dominant based on gender identity or not, and other identities as well. We all have to come together and ensure that we oppose bills that are meant from their very nature to oppress us all. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. And up next we have I'm just gonna say a student, because we know these universities and institutions currently now today like to penalize their students for speaking out and actually practicing some of the things that they learn about in these courses. So I'll just let them speak and identify themselves as they choose. So we have a student, Sully, and what was yours?
Thank you. I would like to oppose this bill today because as a student of sociology, this is the subject, the topics, the histories that are not easy to confront, but are necessary to confront. And ignoring issues of racial discrimination, ignoring issues of gender-based discrimination, ignoring our history and what has made this nation our nation today will not solve problems. It will only further the problems. It is so important to recognize the impacts of the systems that we live under. This is something that I study every day and that I live every day, that we all live through every day. And not allowing students to study or even talk about issues of racial discrimination, gender discrimination, classism, ableism, all of the prejudices that plague our world and our systems will only put off the problems, will only further the problems. And make no mistake, this bill, first and foremost, is about erasure. This bill is about erasing histories and lived experiences of people who have been on the sidelines, people who have been marginalized by systems in this country. And if we cannot give a voice to the voiceless, and power continues to be consolidated through thought, through academics, we will go somewhere that we do not want to go. This bill will negatively impact my education, the education of thousands, millions other students like me who are trying to study this world and understand this world in order to make it better. And this bill stands in the way of that. I oppose anything that opposes academic freedom or free speech or pursuing a more just world. Thank you.
Your name spelled for us?
Sully, S-U-L-L-Y.
Your full name?
Snook, S-N-O-O-K. Thank you.
Silly. Up next, just a guy with a cool name, and he happens to be a member of AJC, Atticus Finch. I mean, just, there you go.
Howdy, everyone. My name is Atticus Finch. That's A-T-T-I-C-U-S-F-I-N-C-H. That's my legal name. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody who's here. It's encouraging to see so many people coming out here and braving the cold weather to talk about this bill. It's alarming in its breadth and also in how imprecise it is at targeting any offending language that the congressman seems to want to get rid of. I am a congregant at Austin's Congregation Beth Israel, which in the last few years was set on fire by a white supremacist. These issues are near and dear to our community. They threaten the lives and livelihoods of our community members and people who are dear to us. It's shocking to me that this bill has been proposed that would mandate the erasure of so many contextual issues in our modern society that are necessary for the next generation of citizens and statespeople to understand their society as it works today. Fundamentally, I think it's misguided, and I hope that today we can come out and show our support against this bill so that way it will not get passed. Thank you so much.
Atticus. And just to be clear, there's another House bill that is similar to this, but we haven't spoken to the author. House Bill 1280 by Schoolcraft, who was a member of the House, and then he left in like the 90s, and now he's back. And we just believe Harris has more relevancy, and that's no disrespect to Schoolcraft, but that's why we are concerned about this one actually going down the pipeline rather fast. Up next, we have a community member that just heard about this from my emails and bothering people, Jennifer. And she's gonna, this is her first time too, so y'all take it easy on her.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Yes, my name is Jennifer Caridas. That's K-A-R-Y-D-A-S. I'm a community member. My background actually is a public school special education teacher here in Austin. I've been an adjunct professor at Texas State University. And I'm currently a curriculum and instruction specialist at a nonprofit. And I am here to oppose this bill and also just offer, just like highlight the sort of play on words that is happening. In particular, I'm referring to a Goldwater Institute article or report by Tim Minella titled, you know, it's like about indoctrination and how that diversity, equity, and inclusion is actually discriminatory. Which is a bit ironic in that that is incorrect. Those have been put in place to actually increase our perspective about humanity and who has access to the table. And as an educator, as a white woman, as a cis white woman, this is not the what this bill is doing is wanting to erase, right, experiences and really important parts of history and perspective. There's nothing to be afraid of. From learning about hard stuff, it actually, when we move through hard things, we get to the other side and we are more expansive, we are more compassionate, and we are more humanistic. So please, please, this is about thinking critically regarding the bills that are up right now, and just urge folks to educate themselves and oppose this bill. Thank you.
Up next, we got another person that has been around the AJC ecosystem for a while, Eric Hepburn, who is part of the San Gabriel UU Fellowship.
Thank you, Chaz, and thank you for the words of all my brothers and sisters and siblings up here. I am in the pulpit at San Gabriel UU Fellowship in Georgetown, Texas. I spent 21 years of my life working at the University of Texas at Austin. I want to address my comments this morning first and primarily to the white Christian nationalists who believe that they are doing the right thing with this bill. I walk up to this microphone today with only love in my heart. I'm not here to judge you or condemn you, but I am here to tell you that although you believe that what you're doing is protecting your children, no one can be protected from the truth. Although you believe that God is on the side of the United States of America, I am here to tell you, friends, that there is only one way to be on the right side of God, and that is to do the work. To do the work. The work of being your brothers and your sisters and your siblings' keeper. The work of recognizing that we are all God's children. You have believed you are God's favorite child, as if He were so immature as to have a favorite child. You believe that He has smiled upon your people to the exclusion of others. My friends, it is pure ego. Pure ego that would have you believe that you are God's favorite. We are all God's children. And what God wants for us is healing. So I'm here today to tell you that this bill is not healing or safety or security for your white cishet children. I know that you believe that is true. I understand that you want the myths that you were raised on to be true. Manifest destiny. The supremacy of your people over other people. All of our egos wish those kinds of things were true. But spiritual maturity is to come to a place where we recognize that it is not true. Spiritual maturity is to come to a place where we recognize our equality, our fundamental likeness in the face of such amazing and beautiful difference. For we are all different, and yet, miraculously, we are amazingly the same. You can take the word of the mystics, but you can also take the word of science. The genetic diversity standing behind me today is less than 0.5%. Less than 0.5%. But this bill would outlaw the very inquiries that led us to these understandings. What is the fundamental foundation of democracy? An informed electorate. The only true and real precondition in all of the writings that preceded the formation of our democracy was an informed electorate. And this bill seeks to return us to a state of ignorance that will simply perpetuate the ills that beset us now. A state of ignorance that will do nothing but keep us at each other's throats. Keep us from uniting as fellow brothers and sisters and siblings to bring justice to this world, to bring healing to one another. I want that for everyone. I want it for the white cishet children and all the other kinds. I had a funny conversation with one of the cameramen this morning who said, my cat is one of those very dog-like cats. Well, it's just true, isn't it? Those of you who have been around our animal siblings know that there are some cats who are very dog-like and there are some dogs who are very cat-like. Maybe God is trying to teach us something. Because I see it in my human siblings too. They don't always fit in the box you want to check. But they didn't make themselves that way. They are who they are, and our job is to love and support them. And we cannot do that if we deny them access to the very truths that form the foundation of their life today. We simply deny them the opportunity to understand the challenges in front of them, the healing that must be done, and the truth that we are, in fact, all God's children.
Thank you. Eric Hepburn from St. Gabriel UU Fellowship Baptist Church. We got to go check that out. All right, last up we got Brian Register, who is a part of the ACC family, but he is not speaking for ACC. And then closes out, we got Quincy Dunlap from the Austin Area Urban League. I'm looking forward to y'all getting us out of here in the next 5 minutes.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Brian Register. I teach philosophy at Austin Community College. I'm speaking entirely for myself, not for my institution or my colleagues, and that's Brian with a Y, Register as in what you do to vote. Scholars in general and historians in particular are watching the rise of Stalinist attitudes about education and research in our state with alarm, and this bill seems to more or less epitomize those attitudes of the present. HB 2548 forbids teachers of subjects outside of degree programs in racial and gender studies from relating a vast swath of ideas to contemporary reality, the reality that most of those ideas were designed to help us to understand. I doubt very much whether Mr. Harris could explain very many of these ideas, indeed many of them are too vague to be explained. If, while discussing philosophy of language in a philosophy class, I address the semantics and pragmatics of presumption, rudeness, and slurs, have I broken the law by talking about microaggressions? Could I avoid breaking the law by just not using the word microaggression? If so, the law is easily circumvented. If not, then it is so vague as to forbid practically all subject matter. Note that social justice is one of the verboten topics. Incidentally, Mr. Harris, if you hear this, my use of the word verboten was a microaggression against you, and I would be happy to explain why if you would like some help with your homework. As some people use the phrase social justice, one couldn't teach ethics without it. As others use the phrase, it's easily avoided and ignored. Which use does Mr. Harris plan to forbid? Does he even know? Bear in mind our context. In response to President Trump's rejection of what he calls DEI, the library at Fort Campbell, a federal institution, removed all books that mentioned slavery or the civil rights movement. Was that DEI? Nobody knows. Restrictions on speech are always intended to be so vague that no one can tell what they're forbidden from saying. HB 2548 is true to form. No one will ever have any idea whether they're talking about one of the forbidden subjects, so we may be prosecuted on a whim. The law specifically permits a discussion of Japanese internment, but it also forbids the application to contemporary society of the concept of institutional racism. But Japanese internment was legal according to the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, an act that President Trump has explicitly invoked to justify mass detention policies today. What is the point of learning about Japanese internment if one then goes out of one's way to avoid noticing its very obvious contemporary relevance? Refusing to know the facts doesn't change them. The law specifically permits a discussion of slavery, but it forbids both the application to contemporary society of the concept of systemic racism and the distortion of history. You can't know about slavery, pointedly refuse to recognize that it has contemporary effects, and also not distort history. No conservative could imagine that the mere passage of time would negate a culture of racism. And no conservative could imagine that the mere passage of laws in the 1960s would rewrite the culture or the souls of our people. To the contrary, the home truth of conservatism is that culture endures across time and cannot be remade by acts of Congress. No patriot would imagine that we could make America great again, or good for the first time, by forbidding people from knowing or thinking about our history and nature. No one who acknowledges the independence of reality from their own feelings would think that an act of the legislature could somehow make willful blindness prudent or wise. In general, lawmakers understand that there's a limit to their ability to manage how people do their jobs, because lawmakers understand that being elected to office might qualify you to represent your constituents, but it doesn't qualify you to design a chemical plant to repair a downed transformer. But for some reason, scholars and educators don't get the same respect. Those of us who teach in higher education are professionals. We're given loose course descriptions by our institutions, and we fill them in according to our interests and competences and our sense of student needs. We're quite as capable of doing that as a chemical engineer is of designing a chemical plant or a lineman is of repairing a transformer. Why does Mr. Harris think that his election to the legislature qualifies him to tell us how to do our jobs? Well, I opened by saying that the bill is Stalinistic. It is the hallmark of Stalinism, as explained by anti-communists like Václav Havel and Ayn Rand, that it treats reality as an expression of political power, subject to the whims of rulers. The reason that Mr. Harris has no respect for scholarly or educational competence is that he doesn't know that we are trying to talk about an objective reality that is as it is regardless of anyone's power or ideology. Because he thinks that education can only serve power, he assumes that educators who don't serve his power are working in service to some other power rather than in pursuit of truth. He literally doesn't know what we're doing, so he assumes that he is fully qualified to tell us how to do it. I hope that the House will show some respect for objectivity and America and reject this Soviet holdover.
Last but not least, Quincy to so quickly and powerfully and succinctly close us out. Looking forward to it, Quincy.
Simply put, 2548 is another attempt aligned to several other attempts to eliminate, erase, discriminate, oppress, suppress truth, legitimate free speech and voices of our individuals in the higher ed environment, but it's also an attempt to separate us by class. It is immoral and corrupt. This bill should be pulled or it should be voted down in the Senate and not passed into the law. 2548 is yet another attempt to destroy what is being put in place to bring equilibrium to quality of life. When you separate us by erasing accurate and legitimate information, you create separate and unequal classes. It is immoral.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Appreciate that, good brother of Omega Psi Phi. Long story short, where you for that, Dominique? Let me see that. And you know, we got a whole list of reasons, and this is our analysis, right? We are open to any conversations about what other people think about this bill, but the quick and dirty is we think this bill undermines academic freedom. We think it limits students' exposure. We think it restricts course availability and choice. In a state legislation, that's all about choice, right? School choice, all type of choice, unless you're a woman and have a female anatomy. Disproportionately affects marginalized groups, contradicts the First Amendment and academic principles. We believe it discourages faculty and student recruitment. We also think it creates a bureaucratic enforcement system, ignores the realities of systemic inequities. Yeah, you know, so I'm open to hear whatever the Office of Harris has to say, but we think this is definitely a step in the right direction. And last but not least, you know, for all the folks that say they're against DEI, like the folks on Beyonce's internet have been saying, you should be required to say the whole thing out loud, right? You can't stop hiding behind these three letters. Like, you should so boldly say, I'm against diversity, I'm against equity, and I'm against inclusion, right? Like, I want people to start, like, force people to say that. When y'all ask people questions about DEI, don't shorten it up for them. Like, ask them, is this an anti-diversity and equity and inclusion bill? And make them answer that question, right? And it's crazy to me that we have a governor who benefits from inclusion and equity here at the building, right? If we didn't have equity and inclusion, we wouldn't have ramps for our disabled members of the community, right? So like, let's cut all the BS and let's get down to the numbers. This is a piece of legislation that's trying to take us back to not too long ago, right? Because again, you got to think about this, because we don't sit with this enough. The Voting Rights Act of America passed in 1965. Michael Jordan was born in 1962. Like, this ain't that long ago, right? So we're taking steps backwards. And we have good people like this behind me, the Urban League, all these good, fine community folks from Dallas and all over the place that is always asking is Representative Harris, our House members in the Senate, to do the right thing. Let's move forward. Let's do the things we need to do to move forward, not backwards. So I'll take any questions if y'all have some. That's why I love this group of media right here. And thank y'all for coming. That's it. And if y'all need to speak from a representative from Brennell's office, they are right here. Yeah. Tatiana. Thank you guys so much. Thank you.